Hello, everybody. Welcome to Shadow at Night. This is Wednesday, May the 29th, 2024. On the show tonight, the chairman of the board of Bow Valley Credit Union, Kevin Karpovich, joins. We're going to talk about digital currency. We're going to talk about the Bank Act, but more importantly, we're going to talk about FinTrack and what the federal government did to us during the Freedom Convoy a couple of years ago and why the big banks complied. You would think, and I'll ask Kevin this on the show tonight, but you would think that just the five banks alone, the five big banks in Canada, worth trillions and trillions of dollars in assets, would be able to, having that much money and that much power that goes along with the money, be able to have just said, no, we're not doing that because it's illegal. I don't care if you've invoked the Emergencies Act or not. It's interesting. And Kevin was in these discussions, so perhaps he can enlighten us to some degree exactly what went on in these discussions and how these decisions were arrived at, and all kinds of interesting stuff tonight. Of course, central bank digital currencies seems to be on the top of the list that everybody wants to discuss. Don't forget to like and share, guys. Let's get this out there to as many people as we possibly can. The Shadow at Night live stream, as always, is brought to you by Canada Nano Silver. CanadaNanoSilver.ca with the toothpaste here. We've got the cinnamon, we've got the spearmint, and we've got the bubbleberry for the kids. Naturally whitening, helps keep your teeth clean with triple action nano silver. Silverceuticals technology is made from only the highest quality ingredients. This unique toothpaste is kid safe and uses powerful natural ingredients, triple action nano silver, to help clean your teeth and promote healthy teeth and gums. And then above ground mined coral calcium will help to scrub and remineralize your teeth. Get rid of that tartar and that plaque as well. The bubbleberry is absolutely delicious. The kids are going to love it. So get yourself many, many, many tubes because they're going to want to brush their teeth at least 6 times a day, probably more. The toothpaste and all the other fantastic products available at CanadaNanoSilver.ca. Again, that is Canada Nanosilver, all one word, .ca. If you're looking for a retail location near you, you can find one on the retail locations tab. And if you would like to become a retailer of these awesome products, get a hold of Kevin and Anna through the contact tab at CanadaNanoSilver.ca. Again, that is CanadaNanoSilver.ca. Facebook tonight. Dolores is watching. Hello, Dolores. Kev from Canada Nano Silver is here. Colleen is watching in Madoc, Ontario on Facebook. Justin is watching tonight from Winnipeg. JJ is watching as well. Colleen is here. Hello, Colleen. How are you doing? We'll have to get you back on and see how you're doing these days. Sorry to hear about the loss of your hubby a couple of months ago. I'm not sure if I mentioned that. Dawn is watching tonight from Winnipeg. Hello, Debbie, watching in Oakbank. Frank is watching in Athabasca. Christina, hello. 2 nights in a row made it live. Christina usually watches, she tells me. You guys message me. I don't usually get to watch live. I try to interact with as many of you guys as I possibly can. I do get lots of messages, so if I don't get back to you immediately, please forgive me. There's a lot of them. Anyway, Christina says, I don't usually get to watch you live, but here I am 2 nights in a row. Usually she's watching the replay the next day. So hello, Christina, watching in likely British Columbia. Mary Pinn is watching in Newfoundland. Iris is watching in Calgary. If you're watching on Facebook or if you're watching on X tonight, please get us out there with a like and a share. And of course, on X, it is a repost and a heart. If you're watching on Rumble tonight, like Amnesty is, and Want to Keep Her, and Patricia, and Mouth of the South, and Pie Master 15, and Stump Slayer, and Old Woman's Mad, and Winston Smith, and Dyson, and Goshi 26, and Patty Lamb, all you guys watching on Rumble tonight. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up. That gets us through the 100 million strong Rumble community, gets us on the front page next to Tim Pool and all the big names that you see on Rumble all the time. Russell Brand, names like that. And if you want to share using the Rumble platform, get it out there as well. You can hit the share button beneath the screen. That highlights the URL above the screen. And from there, you can copy and paste to your favorite location, whether it's social media like Telegram or Facebook or Instagram or whatever, or you can send it on an email. So go ahead and take care of that. Again, let's get this out there to as many people as we possibly can on whatever platform you are watching on. Thank you for being here tonight. Let's bring him on now. Kevin Karpovich. He is the chairman of the board of Bow Valley Credit Union. I had the opportunity to meet Kevin at the fundraiser for Chris Barber a couple of months back in Swift Current. Although, Kevin, I do have to say our conversation that night was difficult because Tamara's band was playing right in front of us, and it was really loud that night. Tough to
It
hear.
was. It was actually
Uh,
very loud, but thank you very much. Actually, thank you for asking me to come on. Appreciate
yeah,
that.
I'm,
Hopefully, I
I'm
can open up some ideas, have some people think about some things, and maybe open up their eyes a little bit to what's going on out there and a bigger picture.
Well, the first thing that people are urging me to ask you about, obviously, is the central bank digital currency. We've been hearing so much about that. We hear in the United States that the House of Representatives just passed a bill that's going to stop that from ever happening down there. Of course, that's as long as the Republicans control the House down there. We don't know how long that's going to last. Up here in Canada, it seems to be more of a mystery. The Bank of Canada says, well, I mean, we could do it. We could look into it, but that's more of a government decision than ours. And nonetheless, after having said that, they're still putting surveys out there all the time. Would you be interested in seeing more about a central bank digital currency? So people are worried about that, but you say that may be a little bit too much. We've got other things to worry about, yeah?
Well, yeah, they put out a survey back in May, and it would have been come out there for everybody to give input. They've solicited from various retail sectors, most industries, including the financial services sector. One of the things, though, is they are building a framework for central bank digital currency. They've been doing that now since approximately 2017-18. This is not something that just came on the vision in the last 3 years. So when I say, I made that comment to you, it's something to be obviously monitoring, but it's not the one that's really going to be the bigger impact. Because if you look at it from a bigger perspective, also the one where they passed the bills in the United States was more around the this whole cryptocurrency thing, and it fits in with a couple of their bills, which they invoked a few, if you may, exit ramps. Because when you have cryptocurrency, you have to bring it in to be able to pay your mortgage or something. You just can't pay with cryptocurrencies. It just doesn't work right now as a mechanism for payment, unless you have crypto accounts and you pay back and forth. But I don't think, the mortgage company is going to take a cryptocurrency. Some may. So you're stuck with that situation. How do you get on? So they had a bill they passed actually earlier in the year. And I want to just start with theirs because I think that's the big thing. What they did is they tightened up the off ramp. And what they did was simply put in legislation so that the manner by which you convert your cryptos into currency, US dollar, for an example, is more controlled, so they can actually see what the transactions are, where it's going, how it's being handled. And they're doing that through blockchain technology, start and finish. And it's a kind of an electronic receipt process, right?
Isn't blockchain kind of dangerous because that in itself is the digital model for this, right?
That's right. And it's been around, believe this or not, it's actually been out there since 2014, 15. Blockchain. This is not
They have
something
been
new.
have they been used? I'm sorry to interrupt you. I've got so many questions. Like, have they
Sure.
been using this? Is this now a thing that's actually in play and nobody even realizes?
Well, there's probably pieces of the puzzle out there that are operational. When you look at this and everybody talks about what's going on now with this whole AI, and I don't want to get too far down that hole at all. I just want to bring that up. AI is simply machine learning, but it tracks everything. It's tracking everything. So is that not, in a sense, a blockchain? In a sense, it is. It's tracking everything. It knows what's going on. So yes and no, but blockchain's been more reserved for the accounting aspects of transactions. But again, it's being monitored out there. Anything that goes on the line basically is being tracked in some fashion. That currency that the law they passed with the central digital currency, central bank digital currency clearly is that you are going to be doing something that's going to be with a central bank. In other words, you're going to open up a bank account. I'm going to go at the high level here, and then I'll work back down. The reason I'm saying that is what that does is puts an immense pressure on what we call C2 banks or commercial banks, the retail banks. Because if you have a direct bank account with the Central Bank of Canada, why do you need a bank account at, BMO, TD, credit union? You don't need a bank account. You're dealing directly with them. And so that's where you would see more of the blockchain going. So when I say they've been exploring and doing this in Canada, they have been in the United States. We've been doing it in Canada now since 2017, 18. There's been two real major proponents in about 2020 that have been fleshing out the details of how central bank digital currency may operate in Canada. And there's two financial institutions that have been doing that, requested by the Bank of Canada, who has been asked to look at a framework for central bank digital currency, not to deploy, as you stated there, Shadow. That's correct. They cannot. That has to be from Parliament pass. But they've also been asked, and there's a bill that was put in through the Senate, and you can go back and the viewers can go and look at this, that's been passed to look at a framework in 2019. Subsequently, they have been working at a framework. Now, they gave the first blush, as I mentioned, early on, just to see if it's viable, what could happen, what would go on. Subsequently, one of the institutions that went through the trial actually got involved in the US in their trial. And so we had a Canadian entity that was actually a financial institution that was actually working with the feds in the United States on their central bank digital currency. What that share is, I tell you, I can't speak to that. I don't know. It's very quiet. They give you one-liners in an article, and that's it. You don't get no detail. But right. I'll tell you, if you want to, go to the Bank of Canada. I suggest your viewers take a look. Bank of Canada, it has on there their central bank digital currency, the framework, what they're looking at, how they're reviewing it, who they're engaging with, what are their findings to this point. There was an individual that was hired about 2.5 years ago, roughly, to look at setting up the backside of it. In other words, the financial, the tool, be it blockchain, be it whatever that's going to run this. Again, that's not really been disclosed as to how far down that road they've been, but there is information out there. It's possibly blockchain, maybe some modifications to it, could be AI engaging. That we don't know, because that's what they're working on with this framework. So can't really say that they've got it finalized yet, because they haven't. There is
it's not so much the technology, I think, that most people have got a problem with. For example, if you go to a grocery store and you want to use the instant checkout, that's fine. Go ahead. But as long as the cashiers are available, as long as I have the option to use cash, I don't want to have to use my card today. By the way, in my opinion, that slows things down as opposed to speeding things up, which is the initial reason they told us it was going to be such a great thing. But, and again, this new technology, central bank digital currencies, I haven't got a problem with it. What I've got a problem with is that they can apparently be programmed so they operate like coupons, and that there will be no actual physical currency that we can use to make transactions with any place. And they're starting, because I know that the government's got programs out there for small and medium-sized businesses to go all, I don't want to say digital, but to go all cashless. So you're seeing a lot of that happen now.
They are pushing that. They are pushing it a lot. And I will speak to that a little bit here. There has been a lot of challenges with that, because there are not, and the Bank of Canada has clearly stated, unless there's a directive that changes that the currency, monetary currency, paper money will still be in existence, and the central bank digital currency, if introduced, would be working in parallel. They would not eliminate one with the other. Now, that all said, they have had experiences that have been going on around the world. Everybody knows very well what goes on in China. They're concerned about what goes on for that social monitoring and social credits and so on. I'll give you another example, and I don't know if people know this, but India last year, with 1.5 billion people, that is more than China in population. It's more of a democratic society. They introduced a central bank digital currency, of which the uptake was extremely low. So much so that the government said, oh, this isn't working. They want to keep their paper money. So what they have done, and this would have been April of this year, they introduced pushing that out to the retail sector. So the retail sector now is the ones that are having to try and get the people to do it. The challenge is the uptick is not any better. And so there is resistance, and it's large enough resistance that they may want to do that, but people are not willingly accepting that. And so the pushback on the or the central bank digital currency, because I'll get to the other one in a minute, was been very strong. And so they're finding opposition even now. There hasn't been too much reporting on it yet.
Let me ask you why it's so important to these people to do this. I mean, what is wrong with the current situation that we have right now? It seems to work fine for me, and nobody's got any complaints.
For sure.
Why?
Well, I guess you can't track all their buying purchase. It's pretty hard to track dollars. You can't track fiat currency. What you also have is other things that are pushing on them right now, and it's called inflation. There's a lot of facts that are going on right now. And if people look at the amount of inflation that's going on in the world, everybody can realize it's not 2%. I mean, everybody goes to the grocery store knows it's not 2%. And so when you go through this and they keep saying the same story and the same story, in the background, if you look at what's going on now, even in Canada with inflation, it's going up because what they do when they identify their gross domestic product, typically what they would do is just tell you what it is in Canadian dollars. Well, what they're doing, since our biggest trading partner is the United States, what they do is they convert it first and then broadcast it in Canadian dollars. So obviously they get the 130 uptick on their dollar for an averaging. So it looks like the gross domestic product is actually increasing. Where in actuality, if you look in Canada, the impacts are so strong, and I think people can see that out there, that the economies actually aren't growing. They're, if anything, very fortunately, if possible, stable. And I say that, exactly.
I don't know.
Cheek. It's going the opposite direction. It's declining, and they're trying to present it that it's not. So if you can control and monitor the fiat currency, you can remove a system that is their system. So their system being, we want controlling aspects to know what's going on in the economy so we can track that. Is there any better way? That would be one of them.
So what you've tacitly said here is that the Great Reset is coming and they want to control everything and they can't track fiat currency, so they want to get rid of that. So that leads me to the Bow Valley Credit Union situation. You guys have been a breath of fresh air for many people these past couple of years. When people found out about you guys and what you have been doing, your gold-backed system, I mean, this is all very interesting to me. You stand apart from almost every other financial institution in this country. Can you explain more about that, please?
Sure. One of the things that we've always maintained as the organization is our core values. We have not changed. And I think that's something that's fundamental that we present every single time we talk. We believe in truth, transparency, honesty with integrity, that what we commit to, we're going to do. That said, we believe that everybody should have their own financial institution that takes care of their money, and we don't need to know anything about you other than you need a financial institution. We're going to get the information necessary for us to do that service for you. We are not one to be pushing services on. If there's certain services you have, we are a full service operation, got investments, you can do self-directed RRSPs, you can do whatever if you want a financial planner, so on and so forth. So all those services are there, plus the checking, plus the whole history with regarding types of ways of investments, different planners. We got financial planners. VZO is one of our main suppliers with respects to the wealth management side, but we do have a wealth management. We also deal with bonds and Q-Trade, other things to this nature. But one of the challenges that we do and we see is that, as I just mentioned, there's more things to look at. And at Bow Valley, that's one of the things we do. That's one of my core positions, if you may. I read the stuff that I'd never wanted to read in my whole life. I read policies. I watch what's going on in Parliament. I'm there monitoring what they're doing so that we can be in a position. One thing that is very clear, and I have to state this, is that, the information I'm providing to everybody here is information that is valuable. And I say, listen, you may have heard it. It may be of no value, but be like a sponge. Whatever you don't want, just squeeze it out. If it's something you already know, fantastic. The whole point of this is simply providing information that there's a bigger fish out there, and there always will be. And what we're doing is simply saying, listen, everybody's going one direction, and we're just saying, I don't think so. We're going to stay where we are, keeping our core value.
Have you been pressured at all by any, because a financial institution in this day and age, I think, has to partner, especially a credit union, has to partner with other financial institutions across the country to build a network, correct? You also have to do some work, I suppose, with the Bank of Canada. And let me show you, I'm just going to throw this up on the screen here real quick. This is the DEI new framework of the Bank of Canada. This is on their website, bankofcanada.ca. Our inclusive leadership. They do DEI, but they call it EDI here. So it's well, it's not DEI, it's EDI. That's different, right? Our diverse workforce, our engaging workplace. Have you been pressured at all by any of the other financial institutions in the country, or the Bank of Canada for that matter, to go ahead and impose these DEIs on your system of doing business and your employees and customer base?
Well, DIE, yeah, that's another way to spin that as well. But no, yeah, there has been a lot of people that have been asking us questions, and there is some obligations, though that is not, for our standpoint, it's at a minimum. That's not at the forefront of our organization. What we believe is that proper people that are employed in our organization, as well as dealings with any of the other institutions, every institution will follow their own guidance. We stick to our core values. And our core values is saying, listen, we want the right person for the right job with right qualifications. It's not necessarily, it's not based on anybody having any special background, character, anything to that nature. We're very much equal opportunity. We have, like right now, 6 bank managers, and of the branch managers, I should say, 5 are women. We have no problems with that. I think that's very much a culture that's out there and always has been. And we don't see a pressure that's coming from the Bank of Canada on that. There's no other pressures coming from anyone else. And the one thing is with the organization is because we're provincially regulated, because we are a credit union that's a provincial. All credit unions are. Now, I must speak to that maybe a little bit, which will help a little bit here too. There is 3 types. There's, the banks, obviously, as we all know, there's the big 6, and then you've got all the other banks, the Schedule 2 and Schedule 3 banks. Schedule 3 banks are, I'll get into that one a bit with the Bank Act, but I'll get to that. I'll come back to that, and the Schedule 2 and the bank. But there's also another one that came out here last year, and this was some of the part of the Bank Act, and this is something I'm going to speak about under this whole FinTrack umbrella, because there's a lot of acts that are being modified since 2022. But that said, there was a push that everybody had with the federal credit unions, and that's a federal credit union is a credit union that can run nationally. And that then falls, once it becomes a federal credit union, underneath of the Bank Act. It no longer is governed by the provincial credit union. So the government doesn't actually have regulations. And so we in credit unions that basically in all the provinces, all are run by provincially regulated. So there's regulations we have to abide to. So yes, we follow the law. Yes, we do not. But we also say when we're following the laws, maybe unique, maybe not, but we just say, listen, what's good for one direction also has to work in the other way. So when there's something that's being implied onto us and pushed onto us, tell us the rational reason, not just because. We actually push back. And we've been doing that.
Have you had that happen? Have they come and said, you have to put the rainbow in your window? And I'll tell you, the reason I ask that, Kevin, is simple, because, you walk by any financial institution branch these days, and because Pride Month is coming up in 3 days. We're seeing Happy Pride Month, the rainbow flags, and that whatever that new flag is, I can't make out what it is. It's all there, and the banks are, there's one right in downtown Winnipeg where I am. It's about 6 floors up on the corner of Portage and Main, this massive rainbow flag, and to me, it's insulting. I'd rather not do business with these people, but you don't really have much of a choice these days, except for you guys at Bow Valley.
Well, we remain nonpartisan, and that's the whole point. It's the matter that we provide a financial service. And so, yes, we've gotten pushback, believe it or not, because we have a Canadian flag flying. And they felt that that's probably not appropriate. And I thought, well, and same with our CEO, like, why would a Canadian flag flying, as it does anywhere else in Canada, have a problem? Just FYI, it still flies today. We just said, no, I mean, we live in Canada, correct? And why can't we fly a Canadian flag? So, we're still pushing all our, if you may, on certain issues, get pressure. We do follow the laws and regulations. When we do that, we're also saying, okay, so provide us the reasons or the rationale. So some of the things that we've done don't fall outside of any regulation. There may be areas that weren't regulated prior, maybe now because we've done certain things. But again, those are open avenues for anybody to do. We've just said, for us, we want to maintain that everybody has an opportunity. So the pressures that you say about DEI and all this, they come. But again, we are providing this service. These are our core values. They're on our website, and by all means, any viewers can check it out. We don't deviate from those. So it's no different than someone else having a wish to put up pride flags and fly those at their organization. That's their decision. Our decision has been, we're going to be doing what we would do normally. And nonpartisan would say, if I was to fly one of those flags, well, that would be partisan to someone else. So we're saying, no, we can't do that.
You're striving to remain normal and neutral, which
Correct.
is absolutely fantastic as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
I mean, it's great. But where does you said when they come to us, and I want to ask you
Sure.
who they are. Are these the
Regulators.
organizations, regulators?
Well,
Regulators from where? Federal government?
No, it would be from like our regulators. If we're doing some things that we want to put out there, we do have positions. So in exactly the BVC Gold, we call it, there were some concerns from language and how it was being used. So we don't use the word you used at the end of it, and I won't recite it. It's BVC Gold. And that was some of the pressures we had got back on some of our marketing campaigns. So, free to say that. But it's BVC Gold, and we're working with our regulators. We have a good working relationship with them, and they understand our position. We understand their position, but we have other people that come in and, organizations or a group that'll have some concerns, or people that express some concerns about, why do you support a hockey club and certain things to this nature with sponsorships? I think it's brutal, and on and on and on. We always get that, and I think any organization would, but it's just something we've done. We're Canadian boys and girls, and we all play hockey one time, and so when a minor team comes up and says, "Hey, would you like to sponsor us and put your board up there?" And
That's so normal. That is so normal.
It is,
right? I mean, it's just so community and Canadian. That's exactly what that is. And again, when I ask you, like I say you say regulators. So you haven't had any special interest groups come up in your face and go, yeah, it's a part of us with the rainbows. No. Because I know other businesses that's happened to, and some knuckle under and some will push back and say, no, we're not going to do that. Always trying to maintain the most even of temper, right?
Yeah. No, and I mean, that's fine. They can come and push forward their positions, but we have our core values. We have our position, and we're not having influences to change those core values. Our core values have always been there. It's not like they just started 2 years ago or 3 years ago, where you're hearing that very comment there, Shadow, where you're hearing the pressures and they bend. Well, we're not bending. We're just staying normal like we were. And so that causes confusion, I believe. So everything gets mixed up. People then say, well, what are you really standing for? Like I said, go to our website. That's what it says. We haven't changed. Yes, there's groups that'll come by and say certain things or want us to do certain things. Listen, if it fits within any kind of sponsorship, fantastic. But if it's promoting something, we're not going to do that. We're a financial institution.
Exactly. So let me ask you about FinTrack. This is something, by the way, Kevin and I talked about, guys, before we went live tonight. This is Kevin Karpovich. If you're joining the show late, he is the chairman of the board of Bow Valley Credit Union. Thank you again, Kevin, for coming on the show tonight. You talked about FinTrack as I was talking about digital banking. We've explored digital banking to a degree, but you said there were more devious things that are going on in our legislation right now that need to be looked at. And FinTrack is one of them. Specifically, you talked about what happened during the Emergency Act declaration a couple of years ago during the Freedom Convoy. Can you elaborate, please, for the viewers?
Yeah, I sure can. Back then, everybody heard about the Emergency Act that was invoked, obviously, but there was also another thing that was invoked. It was called the Emergency Measures Order. And that allows the government to take control of all aspects of finances and everything when they put the order in place, as however they write it out. And it was very specifically written that, if there was any proceeds from a situation that could cause problems. And I don't know if anybody ever watched the National Citizen Inquiry, NCI, but I think I only put that plug for this reason. It was very evident, and it showed in that, as well as the public hearing, that there were some scribblings that were made by Christina Freeland, the Minister of Finance, in her tablet. And it was shown on television. This is not new. And it was expressed, why was that written down? And whatever the myriad of conversation developed, the point is the word was used was called terrorist. And proceeds of crime for terrorism. And so, the comment has always been said, well, why didn't all the banks push back? Well, they did. I mean, they said you can't shut down bank accounts. The emergency measures order was a mechanism for the federal government to invoke control. There was potentials that there was, and you may have heard other things of overthrow the government and all kinds of conversation. So we just sat back and just looked at this and said, okay, well, what does this really mean here? And let's see some evidence towards this. And since there was nothing coming forward, it was concerning that I can't speak to the other financial institutions as to their decision-making process. But the word terrorist was utilized. Now, if you understand FinTrack, which, and I guess for everybody's understanding, that actually is the financial risks. And so I'm just going to take a quick pick here, and I'm just going to pull something here for myself quickly, just so I can enunciate it properly, because I always get it wrong. I call it FinTrack. It's the Financial Transactions and Reports Analysis Center. And what that does is that's an arm of basically the finance minister, who can invoke changes of watching and monitoring money. And I guess people were watching some of the things that were going on, but the changes, if you were to read the actually emergency measures order, it conveyed, as well as Christine Freeland, when she was on stage, said that, we have to tighten up FinTrack, and FinTrack has to be able to monitor these terrorist activities and the proceeds from crime and money laundering. And subsequently, there was a comment that was made, and that she would be invoking in her budget in 2023 some changes. So there is 5 acts that are right now currently under review with, and this is where I'll get to the Bank Act, as I mentioned I would get back to, is the Bank Act is one, the Insurance Companies Act, the Trust and Loan Companies Act, the Office of Superintendent of Financial Institutions Act, which is OSFI, who govern all the financial federally regulated institutions, predominantly the banks, and Proceeds of Crime, Money Laundering, and Terrorist Activity, which is an acronym is PCMLA. You can look up that and just type in FinTrack, FINTRAC, and you can read to your heart's content. But the whole intent of that was those are all very powerful acts, speaking to the fact of OSFI getting basically more, FinTrack more teeth, and OSFI getting more teeth to monitor things. So when I said central bank digital currency is concerning, it is, no question. But these controls are more concerning than the central bank being the one giving out the money. So the Bank Act, and everybody, and I think, Shadow, we had spoke about it before. And that was regarding, well, what's going on with the Bank Act? Holy cow, the banks are all going to close June 2025.
Well, I want to bring that up, but if you want to bring it up now, I'll just flash this up on the screen here for people. This is part of the Bank Act here, and the sunset provision says, and Pierre Poilievre was even asked about this by a vlogger. Subject to subsections 2 and 4, banks shall not carry on business, and authorized foreign banks shall not carry on business in Canada after June 30th, 2025. And I've been trying to make sense of that for a while now. Is
Okay.
that what you going to throw that up now? I'd
Yeah.
love to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll go to I'll read the act, and then what I'll do is I'll go back to give you some history on that. Okay. So
Please.
what that is so this is after basically June 30. That date has been changed. Now, what this is basically the governor of council or the parliament has to review, and their documents that they need to review is the Bank Act. And so when they do that, this thing was originally passed and invoked. I'll go into history. It's probably a better way to do it. 1871. And just so everybody understands, this Bank Act has been around for a long time. This did not come up new. And so historically, what they did is on a decennial or 10-year basis, they would review it to ensure that the whole banking acts and process of banking was current. That was the whole plan. And they maintained that for years. And that continued until 1992. And in 1992, they felt that there was too many changes happening with computers being more prevalent and things going on with banking. Instead of having bank books, you had computers, online banking. They changed it to 5 years, saying, hey, technology, everything's speeding up. So 5 years. So it was written in the act as 5 years. Now, the act, did I mention that Parliament has to agree to this every 4 years? It's brought up in the 5th year. They have to approve it. So anybody who's an MP for any period of time, more than 5 years, will have had to vote on this, period, Bank Act. I think Mr. Poilievre has been there a while, so he would have seen these before. So that
Maybe
said,
it was the way it was presented to him. I don't know,
I
but
don't either.
yeah, he said he hadn't heard of it before. He would have to look into it. So
Fair.
if it's something that you're talking about, it's been there since 1871, and it seems to get renewed or at
Well,
least
there's a
revised
catch.
every five. Okay.
Yeah, there's a bit of a catch that kind of catches up here a little bit, because that was every 5 years. So that was the sunset clause. Sorry, in 2016-17 budget, Bill Morneau, if you remember, was the Minister of Finance. And at the time there, they proposed an extension because it was coming due in that year, basically. And they proposed an extension for 2 years to move it out to 2019, March. They did not do anything again until they said, okay, we're going to pass the act as it is, and it will ride up until the act would be basically 2023, and it was to come due again. So what they did, though, is back in April of 2021, the federal government announced that there was more changes coming in the Bank Act, and they wanted to address those. And they pushed it off from, as I mentioned to you back in the budget 2023, the Bank Act, because what they wanted to do, they felt that they needed to isolate the Insurance Companies Act, because most of the banks, RBC, BMO, TD, all had insurance branches or arms that you could go to the front teller and get insurance and deposit money. They felt, the government at the time felt that this was basically not separating the opportunity and the people's knowledge to buy insurance separate, and you shouldn't sell both at the same place. So there was a divestiture of insurance companies, and you probably know that RBC sold their RBC insurance to, I think it's Aviva and TD and all the rest. That was the reason. When they did that, the big challenge is, of course, the insurance guys are all pushing on them now, saying, hey, well, when is the act going to be in place? Like, you're just letting the banks still carry this on. So when you asked about, do banks have power? Yeah, I think so. I think they're kind of pushing them, saying, hey, maybe we don't want to get out of it just yet, or we haven't finalized the deals. So don't chastise us for not getting out of the insurance company. And that said, what they did is they've now moved it to June 30. Now, here's the big change that people probably didn't know. Either at the time in 2017, instead of using 5 years, they decided they were going to put in a date. Everything since 2016 has a date. So it's a drop dead date. So the drop dead date before was actually March 29, 2023. Traditionally, the Bank Act has always been reviewed closer to the fall or mid-year. So what they did is that they said, oh, let's extend it in 2023 so we can deal with the Insurance Act. And we have a bunch of things we want to change in the Bank Act. And so that's why you now see it extended to June 30, 2025. So sometime later in this year.
So nobody should worry that all the banks are going to have to fold their tent in June of 2025, and then the central bank digital currency is going to come into play, and the world government's going to take over. So, no, we don't.
No.
Okay, all right.
You know, and
Not yet, anyway.
Well, actually, I mentioned, you know, I can never say never, but the way it's rolling now, Schedule 3 banks are basically institutions that are foreign entities that are residing in Canada, but not necessarily taking deposits into their front door. They could be doing other things, but not necessarily. They have to get a special permission, and that's under the Bank Act. So that directly affects them, this June 30 date. And the reason I bring that up is so everybody understand there's a lot of things going on with foreign banks. And so everybody's kind of like, oh, what's going on? Why is this Chinese bank doing this and that? And there's reasons for some things I believe in the background, but you know, like everybody else, we can speculate, but I don't want to go and say that. The other thing is
as long as we say it's speculation, Kev, I don't think anybody has to worry about it. But then again, I mean, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah. And I mean, but that's the reason those banks, actually the Schedule 3 banks, are foreign banks. So there's Schedule 2 banks, which then can take deposits. And those are, you know, like your, I guess your President's Choice, you know, those type where Canadian Tire, those are ING. Those are the other ones that are not necessarily your Schedule 1s, which are the 6 big banks, as you mentioned earlier, like RBC, BMO, TD.
Right.
Scotia.
So let's go back to the FinTrack discussion and what happened during the Emergencies Act when Chrystia Freeland, when Trudeau invoked it and Freeland started coming to the bank executives, to you guys, and saying, all right, this is what we want you to do. We want you to start freezing accounts.
Yeah.
My question to Kevin, you guys, before the show began tonight was, if you put all of the banking institutions in this country together, we're talking about trillions of dollars. Am I correct in saying that?
Yes.
That's power. And all it would take would be a couple of leaders or board members or boards of the large banks to say, we're not doing that. It's illegal. You have not shown the rationale behind the invocation of this Emergencies Act to my satisfaction, and we are going to be freezing the bank accounts of longtime customers. We're going to be wrecking people's lives essentially here. Could they not, with the power that they wield and all of that money, could they not have just told Justin Trudeau and Chrystia Freeland to go pound salt? I mean, what are the Liberals going to do to them? Seriously, I mean, you're going to send in the RCMP to the RBC? Give me a break. I don't think so.
Well, it's up to each institution, but what they did use is the word terrorist. And so under these new rules that were provided under FinTrack, it's actually saying that, listen, it's actually proceeds of crime. And so if it's terrorists and they're labeled as a terrorist, money's collected for a terrorist organization, group, committee could be considered terrorist activity. Thereby, that's why I say each organization makes their own decisions. How and why? Great question. I say that the wielding of the sword came from FinTrack, which is basically monitoring what's going on. And those controls can be provided by the Minister of Finance, in this case.
So if FinTrack says we want this,
yes,
like can the bank say, sorry, we're not doing that? Or are you like obliged to follow their lead?
By law, there is obligation that you need to abide to their rules. And that said, does not mean you cannot ask back for evidence and proof of whatever conditions are necessary to do that. And
I mean, even if we look at what happened back then, they're using the word terrorist, as you point out. You correctly point that out, and we saw that in the Emergencies Commission, the Justice Rouleau Commission, there, where, as you say, Freeland kept using the word terrorist. All of the Liberal ministers did, even Trudeau. They pounded home relentlessly the word terrorist during the House of Commons sessions at that time. Every single left-wing corporate media was talking about terrorists, and we know for a fact there were no terrorists down there. We also know for a fact that 95% of the money that was raised both times by the Freedom Convoy, first through GoFundMe and then through Give, Send, Go, was local, meaning Canadian. It wasn't coming in from some extreme right-wing group in Europe or in the United States. It was small donations coming in, 10, 20, $50 from Canadians all across the country. Knowing what we know now, could the banks possibly go back to the federal government and say, you guys lied to us, you guys made us breach our promise to our customers, and we're going to hold you liable? The banks, Kevin, are worth trillions, as we've pointed out. Could they not sue the government for making them do that wrongfully? Because, and it's been proven now by the Federal Court of Canada that the invocation of the Emergencies Act was, in fact, against the Charter of Rights, making it illegal.
That's right. And it'd be up to those institutions to pursue that. I mean, there is individuals that are taking institutions, banks, even credit unions to task regarding the fact that they've had their bank accounts frozen, and rightly so. And could those institutions themselves pursue that? Absolutely, they could. But again, that's their corporate decision as to how they want to proceed. And again, being not engaged and not doing any of those activities ourselves, I'm leaving up to them to make that choice. And I would say for them that, if anybody has a voice, I always say, listen, you have more power than you believe. And indeed, you need to voice that concern. And if you so choose, that may be something you might want to pursue.
Let me ask you, you guys are a financial institution backed by gold, am I correct?
We do have gold deposits, yes.
Okay, so when I say backed by gold, I mean that you were founded on the principle of all of the investments that people do with you guys is backed by actual gold bullion. It's physical gold. You've got that. Not to say that you've got it in a vault someplace like Fort Knox or anything, but you've got gold stores. Whereas most of the currency in the Western world, I believe, is fiat currency. It's based on nothing but the government's word.
Correct.
Right?
That's correct.
Why? And most of the banks, all of the banks except for Bow Valley Credit Union, are just dealing in fiat currency right now. Why did you guys make this move?
Well, for a couple of reasons back, actually. It's a quantifiable asset. Gold is something that has, over time, any of the precious metals have proven to be worth something. It's tangible. You can touch it. One of the concerns we carry is that, we are in a process of, and we aren't fully backed up by gold. We do have gold stores and deposits right now, yes, and we are continuing to do that. It's all managing operational costs as well as, profits and that to do such. But the intention is that, yes, we do have that. And that's the plan, is that, our common shares will be basically BVC Gold. And we have different products out there that we are using and members can use for themselves. But Bow Valley itself does actually have gold.
But nobody else does. So did you see something? And you said earlier during our discussion tonight, Kevin, that, most of the other banks are going one way. You've decided to go another way. Do you see something coming economically on the horizon where gold is going to be absolutely essential for people to have?
Well, I look at it this way. I think it's always wise to be divested in any of your investing. And that's just something we thought we as an organization should be looking at as well. We should be looking at it that, indeed, we're here to preserve the customers' bank accounts. And no better way than we know of at this point is to use gold. And so BVC Gold was enacted and we've been doing that ever since. And
But
subsequently,
you didn't see anything coming down the pike. Like Canada has no gold
yeah,
reserves. I mean, the country has the last of it was sold off, I think, by Trudeau in 2016 or something.
you're
It's gone.
correct.
We have nothing. Like there's
Zero.
no Canada's got no gold. And who's been buying up the gold in the
Um,
world?
about 4 or 5 other countries that are significant, like Russia, China. And the reason simply that we're looking at this is we're saying that it makes sense that if fiat currencies are being challenged globally, the Canadian dollar, as I mentioned initially, has some concerns. I'm not saying the economy is falling apart, but I'm saying that it's really struggling. Inflation is going very rapid. And indeed, if there is any transition where you want to deal in another currency, you might as well be in something that is convertible. And the Canadian dollar is worth, well, I think it's $1.35 or 6, I think right now, compared to US. Whereas, that 1 ounce of gold is like 3,200 Canadian, or 20, I think it's 2,600 US. So when you look at that, you say to yourself, well, why is gold still being considered to be of value if every other nation is doing it? So if all of a sudden, Canadian dollar keeps deflating, which it's struggling at, if you think about this, you've got the Bank of Canada's job is to keep inflation at 2%. Well, you've got all these interest rates at 5 and 6%. If you look at our housing economy and you look at what's going on out there, there is right now 60% of our GDP is coming from real estate and the financial sector. Well, okay. So if those are our two drivers and they say they don't have enough houses, they got to build more houses. Well, I think a lot of people also realize there's 5-year mortgages. And in 2020 and 2019, there was a lot of mortgages that went out because they're at zero. And a lot of people were buying maybe more house than they could afford. And so those mortgages are coming due here generally from June of this year right up until end of 2025. So you're going now from a 0% or 0.1 or whatever you were fortunate to obtain to a 5, 5, 6, 7, 8% mortgage.
How much of a difference in a monthly payment would that be? I mean, I can't do that math off the top of my head with amortization thrown in and all of that. Like if you're going from a 1% to a 5.3 or 5.5%, I mean, monthly you're talking what? A difference between 1,400, depending on what you've got for a mortgage
Correct.
in the first place. But you're going from your mortgage rate could go up by $1,000 a month, essentially. Some people have said.
Yes,
Is that
absolutely.
true?
That's true.
Wow. How
That
would
could be.
people? How would they
Depends on.
even manage?
Well, most people they probably can't. If you listen to what's going on now with the reports in the paper, I mean, I'm just using all the information that's out there, and that's why
Mhm.
I'm monitoring all these policies. Is because right now they're saying, listen, people can't even afford to eat, put fuel in their car because they're not getting paid enough. So how are they going to be able to pay for their accommodation? So they're not working. I don't know. Yes, last year I went out to Vancouver. I mean, if you ever drove from Vancouver, I drove out there. Rather than fly. And the only reason was convenience. But if from Burnaby all the way into Vancouver, it's tent city. Every single rest stop is nothing but blue tarps. And there's people in the ditch. I mean, we stopped there and got fuel, and one's a nurse. So she's living in her van. She can't get housing. It's too expensive. So the question becomes, well, if this is all transpiring, and you ask the question, why would I go to something that is tangible, it's worth money, I can sell it anywhere, versus a piece of paper that the government says it's worth $1, but every other government in the world says, well, it's only, in our country, you have to give us $1.30 in order to have one of our dollars. You got to say to yourself, I think we better look at some other options. So as an organization, we just said, you know what, we got to be prudent and manage finances just like anybody else would. And so we want to be in a position that we can provide something, and we do have for our members, they can buy, into RRSPs, you can do into bank bullion if you want, you can buy it. And we've actually went and spent some time and did a lot of research, and we came up with a trusted partner, and it's a preferred partner of ours, is Silver Gold Bull. And I'll throw that pitch out there. And the reason simply is because they are actually an Alberta-based entity. They sell globally around the world. You can order it online, and it's shipped to you 100% secured right to your front door. So
Let me ask you, Kevin. I'm seeing in the comments here, people are de-dollarization is something people want to talk about, obviously,
Sure.
but they want to know, people living in Newfoundland, Nova Scotia, Ontario, Quebec, how can I put my money into Bow Valley Credit Union? Is there even a way to do that? Are you affiliated with other credit unions across the country, and do they hold the same values that you hold?
Well, and that's an excellent question. Actually, that's something I'm in pursuit of. Um, I am looking for those who are in the same mindset because that is the core values, and that's very critical to us. And so, unfortunately, you need to be an Alberta resident. There has been some recent changes that have happened in Alberta that has allowed to have other entities in, but it's based on our capital, and it's a big, complicated formula. Basically, it's risk-weighted assets, how much we can do. But bringing that up, it's Alberta-based. If you have a corporation, absolutely, but it has to be an entity out of Alberta. We have not explored going out of Alberta at this point. Only reason simply is that we're busy right now. Like, we're literally backed up. And unfortunately, I know some people are even saying it's like we can't get in accounts. We're just overpowered. Like, staffing is an issue, but we're trying. We bear with us. We are working on it. It
Are
is
you all
been,
over Alberta, Kevin? Like in every city and town?
well, as a matter of fact, actually, with a physical branch, no. But as a matter of fact, since 2010, yes. Most of our members actually do it online. So we have telephone banking. Once an account is set up, you can telephone bank, you can use internet banking, online banking, or you can come into any of the branches. You also have Ding Free, which is another option. But we have 6 branches right now. One just opened up in Atchison. In the future, we're opening up one in the Red Deer area. And we are going to be going across Alberta. We have areas that we have been looking strategically at. But once the account is set up, a lot of the accounts can be opened up, majority of them online. And that's something we have set up as well. And then it's just a matter of some of the regulatory process that's necessary. Because as I said before, there's certain things that FinTrack impact even us. And we still have to abide to those rules in regards to credibility of the individual, bankruptcies, blah, 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 blah. So there is a little bit
People
of,
asking, I'm
yep.
sorry to interrupt you. There's people asking where they can buy gold now. If they're not in Alberta, they can't come to you and buy physical gold. So they want to know where they're thinking the Canadian Mint would be a good place. And as you pointed out, there's other private companies that do sell physical gold and silver.
Yes, there
And
is.
what was that company that you had mentioned earlier?
So there's a few of them out there. We've gone through the process of vetting and going through with silvergoldbull.ca.
Okay.
They're based in Alberta, but they will ship globally, and they do. They have operations in, I think it's 19 countries, including the United States. So they'll ship anywhere in Canada. And that is, again, secured to your door. You can actually even have it stored with them if you so choose. So it doesn't never have to leave. Bow Valley has got a few different programs that we've set up with Silver Gold Bull that makes that advantageous as well. But if you're a Bow Valley Credit Union member, you also get a bit of a discount with respects to your gold bullion purchase through Silver Gold Bull. So that's just another thing that we have at Bow Valley.
Can I set up a dummy address in Alberta to make it look like I'm an Alberta resident so that I can come and bank with you?
No, you can't. Sorry. That's one of the problems that is becoming very prevalent. And the reason is simply the governments have basically have indicated that you had to be a resident of the province of Alberta and have an address here and proof of evidence. So you can't have a P.O. box number or something like
Rats.
that. So, yeah, no, that
Rats.
doesn't work, But I mean, we're
Sure.
doing other things too with that, but you can buy it from the Royal Canadian Mint. Actually, BMO sells it literally online. But you can actually, and they buy it from the mint. Actually, the reason we picked Silver Gold
Gotta
Bull,
wonder what the markup is when you say BMO, right? They buy it from the mint, and then we're going to sell it to you for a reasonable 25% markup on that. I don't think so. Just go buy it from the mint.
They have that option, but they also do have it so you can store it right there at the mint. They say they secure it and isolate it for you in the mint. I always said, well, that's okay, but I don't know. But I think the members may want to consider who owns the Canadian Mint. So that's where I kind of looked at that. Yeah, you're puzzled.
Wait.
Canadian
Who
government would own the Canadian Mint.
Okay. All right. Well, we don't want them knowing that we've got gold because they'll just take it, right? Especially if
Yeah.
we store it, they'll just come in. Oh, give me the key. I'm sorry, but you can't have. Yeah, give me the key. I'm a government guy. Let me ask you about
Yep.
de-dollarization, Kevin. We talked a little bit about the countries that have been buying the gold up: Russia, China. These are the BRICS nations, and they are and have been for years now getting off the American dollar, which weakens the American dollar. How does this affect us here in Canada, if at all?
I think it's going to affect us still pretty significantly. If you look at the U.S. sanctions that have been going on right now, it's actually turning around and backfiring. You have all the countries that they've sanctioned all working against them. So we just say we're not utilizing any of your currency anymore. So the impacts will be, as long as the Canadian and U.S. trade is strong, that would not be as big as an impact. That said, how strong our economies are outside of Canada, other than the United States, I think we're starting to see a lot of pressures on the Canadian government right now with a lot of the trade agreements and deals they've got that aren't going as well as they had hoped. And there's a lot of work being done on that. Yeah, there is going to be some effects. What does that look like? Well, that turns and translates back into GDP and our economy growth. Our economy right now is only growing at about 0.5%. So when you think about that, it's
Isn't
not
that
much.
recession? I mean, is 0.5 growth recession?
Well, everybody's trying not to say
Nobody
that
wants
word.
to say the word recession. Why
I
can't we
know.
say the word? You don't want to say the word. 0.5 growth to me is recession. Anything less than 2%, right?
Well, yeah, you look at the United States right now, they're at 2%. And so here we sitting at 0.5, and they're trying, if you look at the numbers that the government has just put out, it's about, they're trying to make it look like about 1.1, but if you really look and dig into the numbers and how they spun it works out to be about 0.5 to 0.6. It's not that strong. And so when you look at the sectors that are holding it together right now, well, it's the auto industry is what they always been pushing. It's also the real estate. Well, there doesn't seem to be any money going into building new houses, but they're trying to push all this, and they're saying there's not enough trades to build the houses. So thereby they say it's a stumbling block. So there is a
You
big impact.
you have been in this game for a long time, obviously, Kevin. You're the board of directors, or sorry, you're the chairman of the board of Bow Valley Credit Union. And again, thank you for coming on tonight. Where do you see things going in the next 5 years?
I see that we need to be seriously engaged as a populace in regards to seeing what's going on with government. Don't just, I always said the same thing before is that, listen, just don't take your money and put it in the front in the bank and just expect everything's going to be great. There has to be, I think, over the last 20 years, people have just taken it idly. And I think we got to get engaged 100%. And I don't know if people realize that there's been a lot of bank policies and things that have changed, regulations, and they're all geared into producing one result, and that is more awareness of every individual's financial affairs and dealings out there for whatever way people want to see it going, good, bad, whatever, indifference. But we can all see that they're collectively trying to get more control. And why? We don't have any clear ideas, but I'll tell you that if we don't, as an organizational people, just organize ourselves, it only takes 3%, and 3% of the population can basically make a big difference here. And you know what? I've been engaged in a lot of things, and there's a reason for that. If there's something that's bothering you, get a hold of your mayor, get a hold of your MLA, get a hold of your MP, city, town. I've sent to my MP over 500 letters. I've sent to the Senate probably close to 400 letters. I've stopped a bunch of bills that the Senate was trying to put forward. I shouldn't say stop myself, but they've stopped reviewing them. This whole basic income was one. I had been dealing with one of the senators from your great province of Manitoba who's tabled it. And she's tabled it now for the 19th time. I must make this very clear. 19 times this one bill for basic income and the reducing the voting age to 16 has been put forward. I can't believe that after the 19th time, I guess they still think it must have legs. And so I've been writing her name is Mary Lou, and it's been a very interesting correspondence until lately when she decided that she doesn't want to have that conversation any longer. But others need to pick up the gauntlet because those are things that are stopped. That actually has stopped. It's not progressing right now. It's sitting in reading one, but That's what's going on. There's things that go on in the shadows, and I just don't want people be aware, but also don't get sidetracked, because there's a lot of things. I've just mentioned a few bills that are going on that everybody's worried about. CBDC. Well, that's one thing, but digital ID is another one. India adopted the digital ID. That was in April. Right now, not going so well. Digital ID is far worse than the other. And just so your audience knows, that Bow Valley does not agree with either of those or support either of them. Yes, you have to realize that there is online banking. Yes, it is digital. It is interaction through the internet, but it's not a digital ID that has everything regarding your bank account, your health, how many medications you have had, and what you're taking, and how long you've been taking it. None of that information. This is strictly banking. So if you need to get a loan, you come in, get a loan, or you get it online. But you're not worried about what you're doing. So our position is that autonomy of the individual, their financial success, and we're there to assist in that. But it's up to individuals to have their own financial autonomy. I mean, there's other ones that are out there. I just must mention these quickly, is that there's one out there now, the banks, if you've not heard here, back in April, they have a requirement. It's called a capital call. All the big banks and everybody under the Bank Act are required now to increase the amount of capital they have to lend. The reason is there's concerns. Why there's concerns? The Bank of Canada has asked the banks to increase it by 0.5. So 0.5% on $1 trillion is pretty big cash. This isn't going to happen overnight. So, everybody might have heard that BMO was trying to buy a big bank in the States. Well, they had to stop. The reason they had to stop is they didn't have the cash. They had to keep it because of this increase on their capital for lending. And the reason that is, there's a bill out there called Bill 243, the capital requirements on lending in the oil and gas sector. It directly impacts that. There's another bill, C365 is the newest one. It's called consumer-led lending or banking. And that's where they can go and actually have open banking is another thing that's coming out. Open banking. Yeah. And so open banking is simply going around there. You can move it around to all these different applications, right? So I know we're running long on time, but maybe another time. But those are big topics that people need to be looking at, because, in the past, if you wanted to change your financial institution, it was kind of like scraping, and you would get a password from the individual that wanted to transfer and his login credentials. Well, the government is saying, you know what? We don't think that's very secure. I think open banking and this process would be. And so what open banking does is gives access to any of these apps, even can go right to like Apple and all these other ones. If you want to just change your investments around, they basically have access to go right into your account, see what everything it is, whatever you got, and say, oh yeah, I can move this, I can do this with that.
Yeah. Doesn't open banking just add another layer to the mix? I mean, it doesn't make any sense to me.
No, and I think that's the thing, that these are all bills that are currently in the House. There's a last one that was entered here just recently by an NDP and BC. It's Bill 372, the Fossil Fuel Advertising Act. And I mean, you got to look at that.
Yeah.
And there's the climate one. And so this is the one that we just got hit with. We've just been resolving with the regulators, and we finally got our position. But there is the climate risk management now on all lending. So, if indeed there is activities, we have to be the transactional. So we have to evaluate the risk on
What?
Yes.
That's outrageous. Why don't you just tell them, no, we're not doing that? It's preposterous. Prove to me that there's climate risk out there before I have to implement this system in my business.
Right. And so we've got a way to mitigate that, and we have. So
excellent.
So saying that, we also have to do what they call transitional, which is in the future, if there's new policies or regulations that come out, we have to be able to be astute enough to kind of figure out what that would look like and be prepared to address that in the lending. I don't know how that has any effect on lending, but nonetheless, I say that because it's not only us, it's all financial institutions in Canada must do that. So if that does not create a different environment compared to lending in the United States or any other country, yes, there is significance behind that. And I mean, I have to read this to you. Bill 372. And it just says, whereas air pollution caused by fossil fuels leads to millions of premature deaths globally, including tens of thousands of premature deaths in Canada alone, and in a major cause of cancer, respiratory illness, adverse pregnancy outcomes, children's diseases, and cardiovascular symptoms, whereas fossil fuel production and consumption has resulted in the national public health crisis of sustainable and pressing concern in a way that is similar to the public health crisis caused by tobacco consumption. This is the preamble and just a portion of it from this bill pertaining to Fossil Fuel Advertising Act. And it says, in the context of a climate emergency, and whereas the Parliament is of the opinion that fossil fuel advertising currently deploys techniques which knowingly mislead the public and fail to disclose the health and environment harms associated in their use. So if you don't think there's a lot of other things to be watching and going to your MLAs about than CBDC, that's my initial statement and why I'm saying that.
Okay, one last thing. Why are the banks or some bank branches limiting the amount of money that people can take out? By that, I mean, I can only take out $1,000 and or I can't take out money from the teller. Now I have to go to the ATM. People are very upset about that. What's the deal?
It's looking at transitioning. If you were to look at what's going on out there, and I can only make a statement that I think is happening. If you look at the only sector that has not been implicated or impacted at all through COVID, it's the financial sector. It's the only one, which is the easiest one to address. The financial sector, if you're going to run with AI. Why is that? Because you can do everything online. Do you need to use fiat currency from a teller? No, you can just go right over there. The teller can do something else and we can reduce staff. Because I just said to you, all these bills I was just telling you about, it's going to impact staff. They're going to have to let people go. So this is a transitioning that's going on slowly but surely, closing branches, reducing staff, because you can't afford it if you're going to be doing all these applications. It's impacting us, the regulations and the bureaucracy and the reporting. For us alone, I'm fearful it's going to be another 3 people just to deal with regulatory stuff. And
let me ask you, let's just say RBC. Sure. What kind of earnings at the end of their fiscal year do they report? I haven't looked at it lately. Like, how much money do these people make?
I know they're in the billion, but I don't know how much. I didn't look at it recently either. Sorry.
It's crazy.
But I do know they got over 80,000 employees. So, when you look at something like that and you look at all the branches, and even if you look at the environment right now, a lot of the entities cannot survive just due to these regulations. So they have to merge. And ultimately, everybody's saying, well, it's just like everybody's grouping up and it's just this conglomerate. Well, that's right. One bank.
That's coming. It's coming.
They're pushing hard, because the realities are all these regulations. That's what I keep saying. 3%, push back on this stuff, because this is where it starts. And it's not sequential. That's the key. As I mentioned, these were actually invoked in 2019. Nothing to do with it before. So this has been going on for a little while.
Kevin, can you come back in the next couple of weeks? We've got probably a couple more episodes we can get out of you. I think.
Sure.
If you're
I'll see
willing.
what I can do.
Okay,
sure.
man. Thank you for coming on tonight. We really appreciate it. Have a great night. We'll talk to you again soon.
You betcha. Have a good night.
All right. There is Kevin Karpovich. He is the chairman of the board, the big kahuna, the CEO. Well, not the CEO, but he is the chairman of the board of Bow Valley Credit Union, with all kinds of interesting information for us tonight. And that is it tonight, guys, for the social media portion of the show. We still have plenty to cover on the extension on shadowdavis.com, including how much did CBC executives give themselves of our money in bonuses this year. That information came out today via Post Media, and we'll get to that as well. Also, like Kevin pointed out just a couple of minutes ago, the Senate is once again pushing to lower the voting age in Canada from 18 to 16. We're going to explore that as well in the extension coming up in 2 minutes. So if you're an All Access member, we'll see you there shortly. If not, if you're watching on social right now, and you don't want to be an All Access member, I don't know why you wouldn't be. By the way, this weekend we are transitioning websites, making it better for all of you All Access members who are having slight problems right now with the comments, with getting the show live, with going back to replays. We're taking care of all of that this weekend. Finally, I'm so excited. I can't even begin to tell you. I can't even begin to explain. If you're not an All Access member, go become one now at shadowdavis.com, SHADOE.com. We'll see you there in a couple of minutes. If not, we'll catch you tomorrow night at 8 o'clock Central. Donald Best, who has been covering the Detective Helen Grus trial going on this week in Ottawa, Donald will be joining the show, fingers crossed, hopefully tomorrow night at 8 o'clock Central. So we'll see you then. Bye for now.